Made in Portugal is the go-to podcast brought to you by Raquel Batista of Lighthouse Consulting for entrepreneurs and business leaders looking to thrive in the Portuguese market. So whether you're navigating complex regulations, overcoming cultural differences, or adapting your business strategy to local demands, we've got you covered. Join us as we share expert insights, real-life success stories, and practical tips to help you turn challenges into opportunities. Hi, everybody. And I wanted to start this podcast about the differences between the LLCs in, for instance, the United States and the Portuguese LDAs, because a lot of people, when they come here and they want to create their own business, this is a parallel that I use very much. So that an LDA is very similar to an LLC in the US. Okay. So we're going to do the company structures deciphered for expats. Okay. We'll demystify Portugal's business landscape for expats. So why does LLC doesn't quite fit in Portugal, and what are the common expat assumptions, and why they're misleading? Well, for one thing, something that I usually pick up on is the fact that people think that they can create a company and then it just stays dormant. It's not the same here in Portugal. When you do create a company, you do have to set a time of start of operations, okay, in the tax office. And if you don't set this date, you can get fines. Okay. So you can't just set up a company and just let it be dormant during years and years, because there's a lot of tax obligations tax and social security obligations as soon as you create a company. Okay. So it's not the same as an LLC where you create one and then it's dormant. For the whole year. So there's also another thing is that in an LLC, there's only like tax obligations once a year, as I know. I mean, I'm not an expert in the U.S. tax system or corporate system, but as I understand, there's only like once a year that you need to file your taxes for your LLC, where you file all your receipts and your expenses and your write-offs, and that's it. It's quite different in Portugal. Okay. And this is something that I'd really like to explain, because this is something that a lot of people have difficulty with when they create a company here, is the fact that there's monthly filing obligations for tax and social security. And so when people think, this is a lot of money to pay for an accountant, because they're not used to paying more than, I don't know, $200 for an accountant a year. Here it's more like 250 euros a month for an accountant in a company. And that's because there's a lot of filing obligations. Every month you have to file for Social Security. Every month you have to file for IRS. Every month you have to, VAT obligations and so forth. And so there's a lot of paperwork that they do, the expenses, the write-offs. This is a continuous work. It's not something that you can do once a year. There's actually once a year where you file your annual tax, your annual corporate income tax, but every month it adds up. So it's a compounding thing. And by the end of the year, what they do is they, have a look around of all the tax paperwork, that it's good. If there's something missing, they go ask their clients. So it's very important that every month, when you have an LDA in Portugal, that you every month be very, very religiously compromised to send all the paperwork to your accountant, all the expenses, all the documentations, all the invoices that they need, because otherwise then the accountant work month by month can be very complicated. And while we're at it, I wanted to add this specific rule that if you want some expense to be a write-off for your Portuguese company, you need to ask that invoice with the NIF and the name of your Portuguese company. You cannot ask that invoice to be in your own personal name. If it's your own personal name, it won't do it. It won't be of any use for your company. So write-offs for your company, expenses that you want to pay through your company, you need to request an invoice with the NIF and the name of your company. My dog was chewing on my chair. I'm sorry. So this is a very important thing, and it's probably something that is different from the US, because I always see this. Okay. Another thing is that there's usually not a lot of communication between the accountants and the clients. So in Portugal, there's a lot of uh, almost blind trust to your accountants. And this is because the rules change a lot. There's a lot of specific rules and regulations that nearly every month change. And so they're the only ones on top of everything. Okay. So of course you can, the best thing that you can do is have systems, control systems in place that allow you to remember to send documentation, to send the write-offs, to request the invoices the right way. But you really need to have a level of trust with your accountant. So you really need someone that you can trust. Ask someone for references. Remember that the connection is not the same that you'll probably have with an accountant in the US. There's also something that is very, very important to straighten out here, is that the accountants do not have access to your bank account, so they can't transfer money out of your own bank accounts. You have to be the one to do that. And so they can send you your salary receipt. For instance, they can send you your salary sheet and say, look, now you have to go into your company bank account and pay yourself your salary. So out of your corporate bank account, so company bank account, to your personal bank account, your own salary. But this is something that you, as a shareholder or a manager, you're going to do this, not your accountant. So don't be afraid that your accountant is going to like rip you off by taking all of the money that you have in your bank account, in your company bank account, because that's not possible. Okay. But this is something that also contributes to having accountants having a little bit more freedom in the way that they act. Okay. Remember to have some control system in place. Remember to request your invoices in the company's name and NIF. Remember to give out as soon as you can the invoices or receipts that you requested to them every month. The best way to do this is to scan them in a good quality scan, or photograph in a good quality photograph. Send them by email, and then keep the originals and either send them by regular mail or deliver them in some way to them. Okay. So because they have to keep these documents for 10 years. Now what happens is most of the receipts that you find the ink will disappear in a few months. And so that's why you really need to scan them or photograph them, to make sure that even in a year's time, 2 years' time, you'll have that information with you. Okay. So the way that I do it, for instance, is I photograph or scan every receipt, one in each document, and I send them over by email to them. And then I send the originals by regular mail, or I'll just go there and deliver the originals to them. Not every accountant requests that you actually do deliver the original documents. What you need to make sure is that you keep those original documents for 10 years then. Okay. Because if there is an inspection, they're going to request that original from you, and you're going to have that archived. Okay. So what other things that I wanted to talk to about is let's unpack the LDA, and let's deep dive into the Sociedade por Quotas, the liability, the ownership, and the key characteristics. Okay, so liability is very much like an LLC, so limited liability company. It's the exact same traduction into Portuguese, is limited liability company. So, what does this mean? This means that your responsibility is limited to the amount of money that you as a shareholder put in the company. So, let's say that you invest €1,000 in your company. Those €1,000 will be the share capital of your company that you personally, out of your own personal bank account, invested into your company. And that share capital is going to be the piggy bank of the company that then the company uses to operate. your responsibility or your liability is limited to that amount of money that you've put into the company in this sense. If there's any debt to any suppliers, to any clients, to anything, the company only has that money to respond to those debts. Okay. So if there's any issue that arises, let's say someone, gets you into court and there's more money that you need to pay, your responsibility is limited to that amount of money that the company has. That's why it's called limited liability company. But there is a very there is a very important exception to this rule, which is tax. Tax, they will follow you to the end of the earth to get their tax money, okay? And disregard the limited whatever, because it's not limited whatsoever, okay? Even if you have an LDA, if you have tax debt or social security debt, they will go into your personal assets. They will go into your personal income, into your personal sphere to get that money. Okay, so this is a very important note that I wanted to leave here. So, limited liability, yes, but not when it comes to tax money or social security money. They will, persecute you until the end of the earth for that. There's a saying here in Portugal, which is paying tax and dying is the last thing that you want to do in life. But still, it's an obligation. And so it's limited liability for other types of debts. Okay. Um, and let's understand the solo path, understanding Unipessoal Quotas, which can translate to the sole proprietorship, not sole proprietorship. Sometimes it can get to that, but sole proprietorship LDA. And when is it the right fit for solo entrepreneurs? Well, quite simply, you don't have a partner. So let me get the sound off. Okay, whatever. When you're a solo person venturing into your own company, if you don't have any partners that you want to share this journey with, very simply, you can be a shareholder of your own company. And so this is a different figure from being a freelancer. Okay, a freelancer is someone that doesn't open a company. Their activity, their business activity, is completely within their personal sphere. Okay, their IRS. So, but you can still open a company with one shareholder, and it is still one company. So it's still an autonomous entity. It's going to have its own name, its own NIF, its own bank account, its own address. It's its own thing. It's autonomous from you, even if you're the sole shareholder of that company. And you can have a manager that is different from you. So you can own that company and have someone else managing it. Okay. So this is something that you can do when you don't have partnerships, when you don't have, anyone that you can share your burden with. You can do this. So taxation is also important to take a look at, and I have a couple of videos about the taxation. And what I really wanted to talk to you about is the legal labyrinth of essential registrations and permits and ongoing compliance requirements that you really need to take a look at. So, first of all, you need to have either a lawyer or a solicitor to create the company for you. You cannot do it yourself. You can do it yourself if you if you apply for something that is empresa na hora, which is a service that the government has to offer, but it's impossible to book an appointment. So you can have the best scenario is to have someone by your side that understands the scenarios, that is a solicitor or a lawyer or whatever, and they're going to explain all the documentation that you're going to need to sign. We're talking about the Pacto Social, which is the rule book, let's say, of the company, the declarations that you need to sign saying that yes, you agree to be the managers, the declarations about the beneficial ownership, the declarations about even the marriage regime, if you're married and you want to create a company with someone else, the declaration about the different commercial activity codes, the declaration about the activity that you're going to have. So there's a lot of paperwork that goes into it. And that's why I say, don't go about it alone. You can book an appointment there, but if you're missing one freaking document, there it goes, another 5 months to book an appointment. Okay. So the two documents that you really need to have is your NIF and your passport, and you're good to go. Everything else, your lawyer, solicitor, or someone like me will prepare everything for you. Okay. Now, HR hurdles. I really wanted to briefly touch on the employment laws that have been changed very recently. But one thing that I wanted to point out is that it is very, very expensive to hire someone in Portugal. And you really need to take a look at the employment contract. This is something that I always make it a point to have a video call with anyone that's trying to hire someone, because they really need to understand the implications of hiring someone. It's not just the implications on the contract, because you can have a limited time contract. Okay, you can have a 1 year employment contract, but it's the fact that, for instance, there's 14 salaries in a year that you need to pay, because there's 22 days of vacations that you have to offer, because there's maternity leave, sick leaves, all of that, because there's 34.75% of social security pay. 11% of that is on the employee's part, because there is medical that assistance that you have to provide, because there's insurance that you need to have. So there's a lot of things that you need to consider. Even like there's a limited number of hours for people working on the week. It's the 40 hours week long. What about people working in shifts? How many hours can they work? Can they work night shifts? How do the rules work there? Can they work on the weekends? Can they work on holidays? So there's a lot of things that we need to talk about. And I urge you to, have a consultant by your side when it comes to that. So I think that after, since we've talked about a little bit about the pre-registration, now the post-registration essentials are, you need to set up your bank account. As I've said before, I do not have any specific bank that I recommend. Unfortunately, the service levels are very, very tough to handle when you need something fast. So I always recommend that you ask around. If anyone has good references, then go by those. Essentially, it doesn't depend as much of the bank name. It depends on the managers of the bank managers themselves. And so if you have someone that you know that works really well, try to open an account there. If you have a specific business, let's say a restaurant, you're going to need a specific license. If you have an open shop to the public, you're going to need a specific license. So all of those things you need to talk about. You need to talk about having a livre de reclamações. If you want to have a website, you need terms and conditions, you need privacy policies. So there's a lot to cover when you create a company. And I don't want to scare you off. I just want to tell you that you really need someone, a good professional by your side to handle all of these things. And so, why Portugal is pro business for expats, I would highlight the incentives. I would highlight the article that just came out on The Economist saying that we're the best performing economy of 2025. And there are a lot of programs that the companies can apply for the European Community grants. And I see Portugal, it's not like we're the richest country now in the world. It's not about that. It's the greatest jump. So this means that there has been a lot of work that has been done. There's a lot of things that have been corrected over the years, and that now we have better conditions to offer. Look, IMA is still not working the way that we want it to work. Public administration is still not working the way that we want it to work, but nothing is perfect. And I see that in a lot of countries, a lot of people also complain. I see there's a lot of complaints, for instance, in the UK when it comes to visa and getting paperwork for the visa. So, we're getting there. I'll bet it's going to be something that it's still going to be, a great choice to come over here. And so, you have to give your step. Yeah, you have to give that first step. Now, common expat mistakes, identifying and addressing typical errors in business setup. I would say that the first thing is considering that it's going to be exactly the same as in your original country. It's not. There's going to be a lot of differences. You need to know them. You need to know your specific taxes. You need to know about social security here in Portugal. You need to know about the employment rules in Portugal. You need to know about what you can and cannot do in Portugal. For instance, trusts. There's no such legal figure in Portugal as a trust in the UK or the US. It simply doesn't exist. Another thing, there's a lot of people, even when they buy houses, they get, instead of paying like the first deposit to the seller, they put it in a guarantor and in a third party that then keeps that money for them. That is something that just doesn't have any application in here. That just doesn't happen. When you buy a house here, the first sign of payment, so the first payment, which is called the sign, you pay it directly to the seller. And then there's rules, if the deal doesn't come through, they have to give it back, and in double in certain situations they just have to give it back simply. But there's no such thing as giving a third party your first payment for, or your down payment for your house. And so there's different rules in every country. There's different rules, and I really think that you should counsel yourself with someone local, someone Portuguese, because, and I'm Portuguese, don't forget about that, because people, just because they go through an experience, they think that it's that experience, specific experience, mirrors the reality, and it's not correct. It's such a myriad, a multitude, it's such an enormous variety of cases, of situations, of specifics, of details that can change your situation. You cannot think that your situation specific is the typical way that things are going to go about, even because things change. So if you've applied for a visa, or if you created a company a year ago, maybe now the rules are different. So please counsel yourself with a local person that's been here all their life, that know the rules, know how things work, know how to look for the things that might have changed, that probably have connections to the local tax offices, to the town halls, to all of that. And so it's important to have a local person. And looking ahead, the importance of professional advice, I say it again and again, having a good professional by your side is key, is the essential thing. Accountants, lawyers, how to find the trusted resources. I always say referrals. I always tell the story of how I started, and not only in my consultancy company, but in my construction company that I have. Expats asked me for a portfolio, for photographs of different projects. And I was like, oh, we don't do that. We don't have, construction companies in Portugal didn't used to have any websites at all. So everything worked with word of mouth and referrals. And my construction company now continues to work exclusively through referrals. I mean, we do have a website. It hasn't been updated in like 3 years, because we don't need to. People trust us based on other people's opinions and other people's referrals, the same as in my consultancy company, in Lighthouse consultancy. Uh, my clients come to me through referral. 98% of my clients come through referral. So, or because they see me in social media, they know my work. They've gone to one of my talks. they know me specifically, and so there's an implied trust. They know what I know, they know what I'm capable of, they know what my expertise is, and so they trust me. And this is something that I know that is also a lot different in the US and the UK, for instance. I don't know South Africa or Australia, which are my main markets, but people usually look through, online referrals or your website or Trustpilot or whatever. And that doesn't work here in Portugal. Really, word of mouth, recommendation, talk to people, ask people what they've done, if they were happy with their service, and that's the way to go. Okay, so I think this is a good wrap up to this little LLC to LDA companies deciphered video. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope this is useful to you.